Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
No, we appreciate your time. Great to get the input. Thank you.
Okay, now at 8:23, I am going to call to order the regular meeting of the Ulysses Town Board. It is April 12th, 2022. And I will request that there is a roll call of board, please.
Ms. Marino. Here.
Present.
Mr. Goldman.
Here.
Ms. Bouchard. Here. Mr. Bobs.
Present from Saratoga.
Interesting note, Saratoga is one of only 3 counties in New York that is, in upstate New York, that is growing in population, and Tompkins County is one of the other 3.
Really?
Yes. Monroe County is the 3rd. There's trivia later. Okay, so we are up to approval of the meeting agenda. I know there are some requests to move things around and an addition, Mary.
Right.
Given the time, can we streamline some things?
Well, my motion, my request, but I guess I'll move. The order of business is to move item 7D, which is the stretch code discussion, up to 6B, so part of old business, because it is a time, we agreed to have another discussion. There's a time issue to it, and so I'd like the board to discuss whether we want to continue to move forward looking into that or not. And so if we wait till it's all the way down there, given the time that it
We
is
won't get
now,
there.
we won't get to it, and I think it's important to get to, so I'm
All right, I'm okay with
requesting that we do that.
that. Okay.
I'm hoping, I'm fine with moving it. I'm hoping that we can actually hit, I think we can consolidate staff reports. But I'm hoping that we can get to the other items on the agenda as well.
Yeah. Let's put a time limit
So
on it.
could we put the rec partnership as a C under old business?
Sure.
We go talk about exotic animals.
We are going to be talking about exotic animals. That was going to be my concern, is that we still have to have an executive session that we do need to have. And we do have people in attendance for exotic animals, both online and in person.
What happened to,
Well, I guess I'd also like to say, I think that under new business, we could move down discussion of the zoning related to outdoor rec fields, because that does not have a particular time
Right.
sensitivity to it. So I think that could go to the end of new business.
well, it has a time sensitivity only if somebody wanted to buy a property that
Well-
had rec fields, then they
Well-
couldn't.
Do
Are we
they?
aware of that right now?
I don't know.
We have there is a property owner, or I'm sorry, there have been people who have run activities through our zoning officer, and to be found that's how we discovered that we're not quite in full compliance with zoning requirements.
All right, but let's quickly, I mean, the things we have, the exotic animal thing, the people,
Well, I
Well, what
mean,
happened to
people
the
are here. I
people?
don't see why we have to address that, other than we should listen to the people who came, waded through all of this, but that again, it's not.
Okay, so so what we're
We should hear
suggesting,
from people.
so old
That's the
business, B is the stretch code discussion, C is the rec partnership. And moving item 7A down to 7F. Did I capture everything?
For me, my motion,
Well, and Mary's is in there also.
Yeah.
right?
Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
so moved.
Second? All in favor?
Right.
Aye. Michael, you can vote.
Aye,
Right, we clarified that.
I'm here,
last
I'm
time
listening. I'm
when I
engaged.
wasn't voting on anything.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure, Michael, you knew you could vote,
How could he vote?
because we're under the executive order. We could all be remote.
I like the way Carissa noted it. in the minutes.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I was
Okay.
wondering.
I'm
So we're
somebody,
opening
Mitch.
Yeah, I know I didn't get it, but anyway.
Privilege of the floor. Is there anyone who would like to address us on, and I would recommend if you'd like to address us on the exotic animals or anything else that now is the time to do it because we have a long meeting ahead of us. So if there's anything you'd like to say about any of that, we would be happy to hear your comments. Are there any hands? Oh, I see a hand. I see Molly's hand.
Hi, can
Go
you hear
ahead.
me?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Molly Watson Kraus. I live at 53 Elm Street, and I am on the ad hoc committee that has been helping to draft this ordinance. I just want to thank you guys for taking it up. And if there are any questions about the whereas statements or any supporting documents needed to support those, I'm happy to provide them to the board and to the public.
Thank you, Molly. So the public is aware, a group that Molly's been a part of, Mr. Goldman's been a part of, Kate Darfler's been a part of, who's here earlier. I don't know if she had to abandon us. They've been working on this since I think at least September, possibly earlier of last year. Is there anybody else from the public? I see Kate. Yep, Kate's smiling. Is there anybody else from the public who wishes to address us? Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, I'm with the Trumansburg Fair.
If you don't mind, it helps
It's hard for
everybody
the
else
people
here.
online. We can hear you just fine.
I guess the biggest question is, what's an exotic animal?
Good question.
What is an exotic animal?
I can provide you with a copy of it.
Anyway, on the fair, we try to have a tree act every year that people don't see every day. They don't see it on TV or they don't, it's something special. And then some are animal acts, which we do have sometimes.
Here's a copy of it.
Okay. Last year we had Siberian tigers, which were, I don't know if you call them wild animals. They were born and raised in captivity. They never, the owner had them for 30 years, or that he's been raising these tigers and raising them, and they never been outside the pens. They have pens and whatnot, and now they're on display. They're doing on display, which we thought was, very nice. It was a very good show. I think most people enjoyed it. We did have a few people from PETA and one of other organizations that didn't agree with it, but we liked them. As far as animal shows, I think they're going to be extinct in the next few years, like the elephants with Ringenberg and Bailey. There's no more circus, which is, I think, was bad. I used to love to see the elephants come out and those ring and whatnot. That's no more. And it's getting more and more like that every year. I think you aren't going to see very many animal acts of any kind. As far as the public knows, this year we got High Wire Act, and the next year we got a High Wire Act. So we aren't going to have any exotic animals. We do have a petting zoo, which is mostly farm animals. Sheep, goats, donkeys, and once in a while there might be a kangaroo or something like that. I don't know if a kangaroo is an exotic animal or not, but there is a petting zoo. We plan on having a petting zoo every year. The public seems to enjoy that, so that's pretty much all I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Was there anybody else from the public? I see Kate's hands raised. And Molly, I don't know if your hand's
Hi.
raised.
Hi, thank you. Can you guys hear me? Just checking on that.
Perfectly.
Okay. Yeah, I was one of the committee that worked on this ordinance, and certainly I'm happy to answer any questions that the board has as they reviewed this. The definitions are very well defined in the ordinance, so I'm hoping the gentleman who made that comment gets to look at it and see what those definitions are, even defined by their scientific classifications to not be confused. And we'd be happy to answer further questions that the board has. And I plan to stay on to help with that.
Great. Thank you, Kate. Molly, did you have, was your hand raised again? Or no?
Oh, no, I'm just on my phone, so I forgot to lower
Okay.
it. Sorry.
No, it's difficult to do that. I hear you. Thank you. Seeing nobody else from the public, we can move on to liaison chair reports. if we have anybody, I don't know if legislator Corman was able to stay on. I see her, but she might be, there we go.
Hi, so I'm up.
You're up. It's only
Alrighty.
8:34.
Alrighty, let me find my notes here, but while I'm doing that, I could tell you a few things that I know off the top of my head here. Where do I keep that? Okay, here we go. We have finally hired a contractor, MRB Group, to administer the 6.5 million community recovery grant from the county. And that's all we have so far. We don't have anything else to give you more details yet. COVID, we had one more person pass away this month. Overall, we've had less people in the hospital. And as you know, and I've said before, we're not really tracking the number of cases so much as the number of people in the hospital as an indicator. There's a second booster available for those people over the age of 50 and those younger if they have immune issues or diagnosis. And we are out of the COVID tests, but we still have lots of masks available. Primarily, those are available at some nonprofits, available at local libraries. If anybody is still in need of N95 masks, so you can go there to pick them up. We have a new, I just want to first say, since you talked about being there in person and available, people being available to still Zoom into your meetings. So we've been doing that for a while, so people are able to come to the legislature during our meetings for to talk to us in person or come online. Let's see, our room tax was up this past quarter, and it was above the 2019 levels, which is what we're basing a lot of our financials on. So taking out the couple of years of COVID and seeing if we're rebounding above the 2019 level. And so we are above that, which hopefully is an indicator of overall local economic recovery in progress, at least. And so that the room tax, of course, allows us to give out, or the board that's in charge of those monies to give more monies to community events and tourism. We are hiring through the Office for the Aging, hiring 2 home health aides. Well, we're trying to hire. And one of the reasons is because that we've had so much, we've heard so much from the community that it's very difficult to find a home health aide. And one of the issues that we've been hearing is that there's a lot of requirements you need to, and there's a lot of responsibility to be a home health aide. And so because the actual wage that they get is fairly low, we are hiring directly to help alleviate that in the community, hoping that because we're going to be able to pay a living wage and provide health care, et cetera, and other benefits. So we're hoping we'll be able to alleviate that a little bit by hiring at least 2 of them that will be directly working for the county. You know about the assessment board reviews coming up, and yours is May 12th. Mary corrected me on that date last night at the Trumansburg Board Village, so I will be there on May 12th to help with that. And the Siren emergency alert system, I know you know about, but just I like to tell the community as much as possible. So that's replace the Swift 911. So you can sign up online to get emergency alerts about any municipality. So I went out and signed up again today, or Claire, but they wanted you to go in and change your profile, even if you are on the Swift 911. And so you can sign up for community news, emergency alerts for each municipality. So of course I signed up for everything that Ulysses. is going to be putting out. And we have a new county administrator that I'm sure you're aware of. It's Lisa Holmes, is who we've appointed. And she's been one of our deputy county administrator for a couple of years, and she's done a great job. So we're really happy to have that she's accepted that position. We are merging our public and mental health departments. We started to do that before COVID, and that was put on pause. So we're looking at figuring out all the steps involved in doing that. Those are the main things I have right now. That's a lot.
Thanks so much, Anne. We really appreciate it. There's a lot going on in the county.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. I don't think we have reviewing the participants. I don't think we have any other chairs present. Okay, so I think we can move on. The next item on the board agenda is to go into an executive session for the advice of legal counsel. Our legal counsel is present on Zoom. So what the board is going to do is we're going to physically relocate to the conference room for a brief session.
You can stay here.
You can stay here. You don't have to go anywhere. We'll be talking to our attorney on my computer, and we can bring Michael in too, if you can negotiate how that works here. So we're gonna quickly just relocate to the conference room.
You need to say what the.
For an advice of counsel, no. For an advice of counsel, we don't. No, not for an advice of counsel.
Oh,
It's for the advice of counsel.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
We're gonna head out. We were here for the.
Oh, okay.
You know, we're against this.
And so we will take there will be no law change without a public no law will be changed without a public hearing, and I can guarantee you that this
Well,
is.
it's gonna affect the buffalo farm too, because they're not considered a domestic animal at this point, buffalo.
Are they on this list? Well, check out that list.
That's the list that she made, but
Right.
buffalo are not considered domestic
No,
animals.
I know, but that is
It ha-
the list that's
But they're not-
changed to the law. So have a look at that and send us questions, and there'll be a public hearing.
Be another
We're
public
just,
hearing on it?
yeah, we're
Yeah,
just introducing it now.
yeah.
Okay.
This actually wasn't a public hearing on this.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, all right.
This was just a privilege of the floor at our meeting.
Okay, you guys have fun.
Thank you.
Okay.
Michael,
Laugh a
hand me
minute.
over my shoulder.
We can stay here.
Thanks for
So we can stay here.
Oh,
We
okay.
can stay here.
coming to bring your.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, never mind. We are staying here, and I will leave. Okay, so we are going to be moving into a breakout room on Zoom, and the public can stay where they are, right?
Right.
Right.
What about, oh, Michael's.
Michael will
coming
come,
in. Okay.
and our attorney will come.
You know, Trumansburg, the village has this really nifty camera system for their virtual meetings, where the camera kind of like zooms around to whoever is talking.
Wow.
And they have like a split screen, you know, with Rorden up here and then, you know, Jessica down here and maybe Keith over here, and it kind of moves around. It's really cool.
I think you're giving Chris a hive, literally, as you're talking.
So wait a minute,
What are we waiting for?
I think I might have to move people to the waiting room because I don't know if I can move us
To
to
a
the
breakout
breakout
room?
room.
All right.
So I think I have to move other people out.
Okay. We'll be back. We will take no action while we're gone.
Oh, yeah, we can.
All right, looks like we're in our own breakout room. We can discuss amongst ourselves.
Good.
So, kind of interesting that the gentleman who I didn't hear his name or address spoke up about my buffalo farm. The
Yeah, what was
definition
he
of
s-
bison, I think,
Mhm.
the definition of exotic was everything except cattle. Bison.
You broke out, Greg. You're breaking up.
considered cattle in bison are of law.
Yeah.
In some aspects of federal law, they're called exotic animals, even though they were here before people came from other countries to settle here in the United States or the North American continent. There was 60 million bison here before we all arrived. And the native people use them very wisely. So, and I'm part Native American, and so I really could hardly consider bison an exotic species in relation to
Yeah,
this
so
law.
Greg,
And-
this is Kate Dreffler, and I helped draft the ordinance, and the term wild and
Hey, Kate.
exotic is very narrowly defined in this proposed ordinance. So I don't know if you've seen it, the draft language. Buffalo is not in that defined specifically for that reasons that you state. They do not include, they're not included in that. So yeah, I hope that, yeah, that there's no, we would definitely want to be able to continue to have those type of operations. So yeah.
I heard someone from the studio audience mention the Buffalo farm, and I'm like going, and this is why I
Yeah.
stayed on.
Right. Yeah. I think it's, they hear wildlife that they don't know, but we really narrowly defined it. And this was with support of the Humane Society of the United States. And this is the language that also is being similarly addressed at the state level, but hasn't been taken up yet. So it's not, drastically off of what you'll see coming through the state. And it's also specifically narrowly defined as traveling animal acts. So like Cayuga Nature Center could get an injured something and still be able to do it, but it cannot be displayed as a traveling act for, public purposes. So it's like this ordinance is like super narrow to specifically those traveling acts. Because we didn't want to limit things like the Nature Center or anything like that. But hopefully that'll all come up in the discussion because yeah.
Things like that get me concerned because the word exotic is thrown around, but you did a great job, and I'm here to answer any questions. And when I see things like this come up, I want to be part of the discussion for obvious reasons.
I think it's great.
And I'm glad to see it's traveling. I'm glad to see it's traveling next, because zoos, public and private, and things like out in
Sanctuary.
I can't think of
like Farm
Adventureland.
Sanctuary, any of that. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, the Adventureland Park over there in Harpersville. I think they'll have great places for us as human beings to.
Oh, we lost you again, Greg. You started to break up.
Help save and preserve them. Of the National Bison. I'm very proud to be a member of the National Bison Association and joining Nature's Conservancy in preserving the bison species and helping it thrive in the continent of North America. Nature's Conservancy produces so many bison that they sell excess bison to many farmers so that we can vary the genetics and keep the species alive and healthy.
That's great.
Hey guys, can I jump in? Sorry, hi, this is Molly. Hi,
Molly.
Greg. This is one of the other people that helped draft the ordinance. And I just want to reiterate what Kate said, and also thank you for being involved as well, because what you do is actually something that we could use to replace these sorts of traveling acts. Because these fairs are supposed to be about promoting local agriculture and local animal educational opportunities, right? Like, what you're talking about is the complete opposite of what a wild and exotic animal ordinance like this is supposed to address. So thanks for coming on and pointing that out. And as Kate mentioned, she might have just mentioned to me, maybe we do need to specify the language a little bit more. So it's good that you brought that up.
Yeah, you won't be seeing me riding them, offering rides, or training them to play ping pong or hop in my car.
I know, Greg.
I've been gored and thrown out of the corral, making sure that they have water. So I really do care about the animals a lot.
Yeah, I've been on one of your tours. I've been on one of your tours, Greg.
I think Greg is likely to support me in the neighborhood if I want to offer pony rides as a special event. What do you say, neighbor?
I think if we take care of the animals and educate the public on how to treat an animal, I think it's very important. And if it's a local entity where the public is involved in observing and making sure that they're cared for, I think that is a great thing. And I think that Harpersville place, which the name escapes me, is a good example of how to take care of many different species and educate the public.
Good
Oh, I
evening.
think they were talking to each other.
We have rejoined the regular meeting. We have taken no business. And we have concluded our executive session for the purpose of advice of counsel. Thank you very much to our counsel. So we are moving on to a discussion. The next up is the special events ordinance discussion.
Since you're gonna have another meeting, should we postpone this till then? So we can get through everything else, or do you think it's critical we do that now?
I think it's a question, I don't think we necessarily need to go into a strong debate. If the board wants to continue to discuss having a special event, to alter the special event ordinance or not,
Well, I think, yeah, it's fine. I'm just saying the matter of time, what's priority?
well, no, my only point is if the board members came back and said, we don't want to make any changes, then that's a very
I
different
got
story
Right.
than we just want to move a further
Right,
discussion
right,
to
right.
a future date.
You know,
So
on one hand, they've said, Grassroots has said that they're not going to do any special events this year. So maybe it's not that urgent that we pass this law. But then again, on the other hand, I think that the changes that it proposes are very logical and make a lot of sense
And
to
I
do.
think, and I think, as we said, we can't just rely on grassroots, because we said this isn't about grassroots, it's about the whole town.
Right.
So, and I think it's just too much pressure on Mark that we put on him to do 4 or 5 permits for one entity. So I'm in favor of the,
Of moving forward with at least
forward.
having more
Yeah,
conversation,
yeah.
Roxanne?
I think that we heard a lot of input, and actually some of the things I was reading and taking notes on as people were saying are like, yeah, you know, that wording might be a little bit, I mean, I feel like, I don't know that I want to just put this out to another public hearing and get back the same and more comments without us thinking about some of it in the discussion first. So I would rather not put this out for exactly as written out for another public hearing without taking a crack at some of the input, some of the misunderstandings, perhaps some of the wording was causing them, that we could tune it up and make it better. So I'm a little worried if we just have another public hearing like that, people, you said quite clearly, Caitlin, that because we have technical difficulties, we would have another one. But
Well, no, I
I'm-
said I was gonna propose that. I didn't say
Right,
the
no,
board.
but, yeah, right,
Yeah.
but because of that, which makes a lot of sense, but I just would be concerned that people would take it as, you're still just you're not hearing anything that we said, and you're just trying to continue forward with this without listening or discussing it, so my preference would be to talk about it, look at some of the things that were said and look at some of the wording and see if we want to tweak more of it other than those 2 things, but that's my thought.
Would you mind specifying what issues you'd like to tweak more?
Well,
Just so we have a better understanding. I don't
people
understand.
were confused about or just to really make sure this is what we want a special event in the town to be, 50 vehicles and 8 hours and or the overnight camping. And there was something raised about, would this affect the Jacksonville Park? I mean, there was just a lot of questions, the special events in ag. I'd like us to just look that up and show what ag can do and that it doesn't affect that before I just would like to have a little bit more information. The thing about no maximum number of permits per year that can be issued to a particular property.
I thought
We
we
might
said,
wanna
I
have-
thought it was limited.
No,
No.
it's the town board can do, they were making a point that the town board could issue 100 to 1 if they like them or none, like people didn't like that there's no
But I
There
thought
are
the thing Mark
criteria.
issued, 20 days, four events, that's the max you could have.
No,
No,
so,
but we're proposing to change
No,
that.
no,
wording.
no. So the way the current law is you can request up to 5 days, 4 events, up to 5 days under the other things. And they only go to the code officer for determination. Any
Mhm.
request in excess of that
Right, goes to the
go.
town
So
board.
the proposed
I
change
see.
does not put any
Doesn't put any limits
limitation,
on it.
and the existing law doesn't have any
Got it.
limitations.
Right.
You know, someone could conceivably
Right.
ask for 100.
No, the existing law does. It says no more than 4 per calendar year will
Right.
be issued.
That's what I
Without
thought.
going to the town board then. The
No.
next one goes
Oh,
to the town
any
board.
applications
Right.
in excess, you're
Right,
right.
yeah.
So there is no limit.
No, there's no
yeah.
limit. We didn't make any changes to that.
Right.
I
Well, shouldn't there be a
But
limit?
people are, this is what I'm saying, that maybe there are some other things to look at. I thought that that was a reasonable comment. Also, you know, that there are no criteria at all, like, I don't know, you know, there still has to be some
So we
give
have
and
to have
take
some-
like the BZA has or something, but we do kind of have the criteria. And if this is the criteria of what you need to get and it's judged on public safety, I mean, maybe we want to tune up just a tiny bit, what the criteria are that are being used. Maybe we don't, but
Well, I think you have to put something in there. The criteria is about what as I said, what the reaction is to the people in the community, the special permit is happening.
well, here's the thing, is that the special permit is discretionary. Right now, it's discretionary for a code officer to decide.
Yes,
It would be discretionary for the town board to decide because the property owner, any property owner, where the activity they're proposing is not legally allowable.
we understand that, but
Right.
still, I agree with the people. You shouldn't do it willy-nilly, or we should have some criteria that guides us in making a decision. Not that, right?
like, what are the criteria that the code enforcement officer?
He had a whole
uses
list,
right
didn't
now?
He did not have a formal list.
No, he doesn't, right. but-
There's not a formal list. There's not an adopted list.
Well, I think we should have some criteria. Mainly, after you get all the permits, public health, et cetera, how is it impacting the community?
Just an outline, rough, I mean, I guess if you think of it like when something comes before the Board of Zoning Appeals, I mean, in a way, you're kind of,
That's right.
you're doing a use variance, like a one-time thing. It's not exactly that, but they have to look at set criteria. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but I'm
Right.
saying there are, and they have a lot of discretion within that to see how it fits, but there are some set criteria that they need to use when they make their judgments. So there's a structure. I thought that was a good point.
I think that we need, I personally think that it's fine to have criteria, but I think it's also important to make sure that we're not giving a right to do something
Right.
that zoning doesn't allow, because
Right.
it's a problem with, oh, Michael, Michael, you can just take you don't have, to hop on in.
So we do have criteria. We have the same criteria that Mark uses. And the special permits, as I see them, ensure the public safety. So with making sure that the health department, that we're respecting what the health department requires, that we don't want people to get sick, we don't want people to get hurt. So we're going to be looking at the same thing to make sure that we can cover that this public gathering of many people is safe. And that's what our criteria is. And so I personally don't, the people that brought up that, okay, I hate this group and I'm not going to approve it. I can go above that. It's just mostly, I don't want people to get hurt doing whatever it is they want to do. And those, as an example of what Tom did one year, he said, I inspected the pavilion and it wasn't structurally safe. So thank goodness he looked at that and made sure that a stage didn't collapse with, many people dancing on top of it, or there's good water, or there's good sanitation, that the health department is going to require, that we're going to ask the health department, did you check this out before we approve whatever it is somebody wants to do?
That's
Well,
one thing.
That's one thing, but not every special event would necessarily require health department involvement.
Right.
So that would be one thing to consider. And the other thing to consider is, do we want to put a limit on how many special events can happen? Because what we're saying is, if you're only making it public safety, you could theoretically have a parcel that's not zoned for commercial activity. And a board under the current law could say, every week, You give them 20 permits and
I
every
think
week you can have a
to- I think
5-day,
I think it's a complete.
and that would be completely
I
bifurcating
think it's
zoning.
ridiculous if you don't have a limit, because then you're completely violating the zoning on every week, on an ongoing basis.
So
It's
that's,
not
yeah,
special
that's
anymore.
one
It's
thing
not
that-
special, and that's exactly it. Special has
It's
a
not
term.
special.
What makes
That's-
special?
You just asked me what I would tweak, and that's one thing, we've never talked about that, we should talk about that, and so maybe we would modify this a little bit before it goes to the
I
next
agree, I
public
agree with
hearing.
you.
And I feel like that's a better thing to do. We took the public
Right,
input,
and we're
we modified
responding.
it some, we're having another public hearing.
I think this needs to be a timely movement. I don't want to see this because this has now been 9 months
Right.
in. So if you would like to provide feedback to me of things you would like to see changed, we can funnel them to legal counsel for modification and review, and we could essentially have amendments to this. We could go through and present them. And we
I
can
wish
discuss an
we
amended
could
draft at our next
Just
meeting.
ask the little Nate if he has any experience with drafting criteria for these special permits.
I just wanted to say hi. I talked to some of you on the phone, but I never met you.
Welcome. I think that's definitely a conversation. Nate, is that something you feel comfortable answering in public session, or do you want, like, is that an advice of counsel issue?
No, I mean, I certainly don't have any issue saying I've worked with some of my clients on special events, mass gathering types of issues. I can tell you what your special event permit seems to be shooting for is a type of mass gathering. And lots of clients put a lot more restrictions than what you folks have done on that type of event. And, you know, not to say that one is better than the other, but I've seen a lot more, I'll say, detailed laws in place. And if, you know, there's a reason I stayed on after the attorney-client session, because I knew this discussion was happening. And so I appreciate the comments that you're all having, and I think they're really, really good ones. You know, that should we define what special means? Should we take into consideration other factors, that type of thing, in light of what the public has commented on? All of that is really, really important feedback for you folks, because you folks are the ones who, at the end of the day, have to be really comfortable with whatever this law is. And so going back to it, yes, I've worked on these types of laws before, very comfortable in working with them and giving you guys advice, happy to do it. And, you know, no one law is one size fits all. Everyone needs to be personalized to your specific circumstances.
Thank you, Nate.
Yeah, so I definitely think some criteria, I'd like to see maybe a sample made of what you've seen that will give us some guidance maybe on how we should approach this.
I think I worked on an 8 or 10 page mass gathering law that I think I might have forwarded on to the town at some point in the past couple months, but that's it. That's a very detailed approach to this type of thing, but happy
What
to
is-
provide other examples.
How many people are considered a mass gathering?
In that case, might have been 500.
Right, so yeah, we want something less than that. I mean, a wedding of two, you know,
Well, weddings don't, they fall outside of, I think.
Well,
not-
if it's
not-
less than 8 hours and
Yeah.
less
Yeah.
than 50
50
vehicles,
Most
yeah.
times.
No, it
there.
says the following shall not be considered a special event for purposes of this chapter. An event, non-commercial social gathering at a single-family residence, including but not limited to a party, a family reunion, or a wedding. It doesn't seem to matter how big it is. That's what I mean. There's some stuff here that's potentially
So why did you
contradictory that
say
I
it
was
was 80
noticing when
hours
people
and
were.
50
Well,
cars?
because I know there are properties who are considering potentially hosting weddings and it's a commercial activity.
Right,
And this is a private,
non-commercial.
so
A private
private.
wedding.
And there's a distinction between those two. So if somebody had, say, you know, an Airbnb,
Right,
and is that a single, is, you know, being able to clarify, is that a commercial
Right,
activity?
that was
Or
brought up too. That was another one of my notes that I think we should look at, because that, what is that? Is that commercial? It's not a single family residence, but is it a commercial? we should just be clear on it. That was brought up specifically.
Because we might have people in the town who don't want their neighbors of any ilk having a wedding every weekend.
They're not gonna have,
Well-
you know, they may not have the parking for.
Yeah.
There's a very valid question, right? So think of Airbnb. Most places justify those as short-term rentals. And so then once you get beyond, okay, so a short-term rental, 30 days, something less than 30 days. After you go 30 days, it's a typical tenancy for a landlord and tenant. So what's a reasonable or an expected accessory use to a short-term rental or a long-term rental? Weddings held by the person residing in the home. Now, if somebody who owns a short-term rental has 12 weddings a year as accessory uses to that short-term rental, I'm not going to say exactly how I think about it, but I think there's a real discussion to be had about whether that should be something allowed under your zoning code.
Yeah,
Right, so I mean, I
Yeah.
think there are things that we need to think
I
about
agree.
more and talk about more, so. And as Mary said, it doesn't seem like it's gonna be an issue this year. They can do one, they can do 5 days.
No, they can do 4. Anybody can do 4 to
Five.
5,
It
up to
says a
5 days.
special event shall be no more than 5 days.
Right,
5
you
days.
could do 4 events for 5 days. I mean, I think last
Right.
year we saw a lot of public pushback on how the summer ran.
yeah.
And I don't
Right.
think this, again, I don't think that this is not a grassroots issue. I think it was brought to our attention that our special event ordinance
Right.
may not be written in the way that is in the public good necessarily. But that doesn't mean that we should predicate it only on what one operator of one property is doing.
No,
That's not fair.
Absolutely, I'm just saying that I don't see that there's a huge time
Times,
crisis. That's
crunch, yeah.
because it seems like we just have a lot of things that have come up
yeah.
that we should think about a little more if we're
Yeah.
gonna change the law. I'm not saying we should just, drag our feet and not do it for another year, but I'm saying that I think we should do due diligence to process what we've heard and look at the
yeah.
inconsistencies, that's all.
Well, I think for public transparency, we should be doing this at town board meetings where the public can attend.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
And so I
Sure.
will plan to put this on next month's, our next agenda
Yeah,
for April 26th.
And in the meantime, Nate, if you could get us some info on some sample language for these things, that would be helpful.
Happy to provide some examples of what other towns and villages have utilized in the past. I think, just to reiterate, right? Every place is unique. Your zoning code, not the same as every other zoning code. And so I can't cookie cutter you into one thing versus the other, but I can definitely provide you some examples of what other folks have done.
Just to give us ideas. Would be good.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the stretch code discussion.
So after the last meeting, we said we would talk more about it at this meeting, so I talked to both of the task force coordinators in the 2 towns that have adopted it here to find out what issues happened with their town, what the concerns were that came up, what the process was that they used. And so that was all very helpful. And so I just want to know, if the board wants to take this up, and if they want to take it up, trying to see if we can make the timeline work to adopt it by the 30th of June, so that we get much farther along towards other grant funding for sustainability actions that can help our town people and our town, or not. And so, I mean, the main reason I think it's important to do is not to get that, it's just to do it. This is the direction in which the state is moving. Anyway, they're continually looking at changing this code. This is to make it more energy efficient, the buildings more energy efficient, doesn't require any particular type of heating system or not. And it's working, the state is working to align, the codes with the New York State energy and greenhouse gas reduction goals from the climate CLCPA and other things. So I think it's a forward-looking thing to do that helps our residents, helps them save money on their properties. It helps our housing stock just be more energy efficient, and there are some studies that say it gives it a higher value. Anyway, there's a lot of information out there. I'm happy to pull it together. I'm happy to do whatever needs to happen in terms of a structure. I'd like to see the CSAC, we talked about it. They said they could take it up and give an opinion to the town board if the town board wants it. Their next meeting is April 20th, so we could ask for that. I'd like to ask the planning board to look at it. Both of the other two towns have their planning boards look at it, and I think that's a good thing to do. So we would need to try to get it on the schedule for one of their next meeting or two, and I don't know who to ask about that, what their schedule is, who is that, who?
The planner, John Zepko, still our planner.
Oh, is he still?
Yeah.
He's still managing the planning board
Yes.
stuff? Okay,
Yep.
great.
And their next meeting is, I believe, May 5th.
Oh, I thought it was April 19th. It
No,
says
they-
on the town board.
They don't have any business, so it'll be canceled.
But maybe if we ask them to look at this, they might be willing to do it.
Maybe, I think they already know that they don't have any business, so I don't know.
Well, maybe
No.
I could ask them then or not, but it would be good if they did it at a meeting where they didn't have a lot of other business, so. I'd be willing to ask them. I mean, if the board doesn't want to do it anyway, that's fine, but if we want to get all the input, we need to do it on a timeline. I have been talking with people in the village. I have heard that the village is looking at this also, and Ben Carver's in charge of that or leading that.
Yeah, they're gonna have a discussion at the next village meeting,
So I've
which is in
written
2 weeks.
to Ben, and I'd like to have, certainly like to have input from, the village code enforcement officer, Tom Meyer, who is a builder and a code enforcement officer who, and I brought up to Ben and Rick Carver and Rick Darfley both that perhaps we could have that discussion jointly, maybe with our code enforcement officer and their code enforcement officer, and we could get Lou Vogel to come and answer questions if they thought that would be helpful, just as an efficient way to do that. So I have a lot of materials, outreach materials that I think it would be important to pull some of it together and put it on our website as something that we're considering, and then we could put it in the newsletters if we were going to consider it. And so people start to see it and start to read some of it, and if they have questions, can contact someone. I can put my contact info for that. So I'm willing to work on all of this
So let me
if
just
the
ask you a
board is
question.
willing to think about it on that time frame.
The reason you want to do it by June is to get the 10 grand?
June 30th, if you pass, if a municipality adopts the stretch code by June 30th, you'll get another $5,000 grant like we got for the clean energy, for the clean heating and cooling. And you get a lot of points, like 1,200 points in the structure of the Clean Energy Communities Program towards being eligible for $10,000 or $20,000 grants. And we will
So
basically be at the 10,000.
Can we adopt, my concern is grandfathering in all the projects that have already started from a builder's point of view. I don't want
Well, I
somebody
mean,
who's already started to build have
Well,
to change.
Do they
their
have to change their
plans.
plans?
I don't know that. I mean, we
Yeah.
can ask, I can.
Well, I think
can
that's a
find that out.
critical piece.
Well, if a permit has already been issued,
Right.
it can't be repealed because the
Right.
code changed. But I am aware of some fairly large scale projects in the works. And I don't know if those designs, I'm thinking particularly of the CARS project, which is coming back before the planning board in May, and they are years behind because they ran into funding issues. Cost of materials has skyrocketed. And it's going to be a question if their building will meet the criteria. And if we adopted it by June 30th, they might be back to the drawing board. And I'm not suggesting that you don't pass laws for one property owner, but I'm at least aware of one who may be impacted. And I want, my concern would be making sure that the public is fully aware, because it's not, public notice is not sufficient on a building schedule. Projects are planned months in advance.
Right.
So that would be my concern,
And
is
if we
making
adopt
sure.
it June 30th, can we have it start at a later date, or does it start immediately?
I don't know that.
So that's my other question.
I thought the coordinator said that it had to, I thought you, from your presentation, that it
right.
had to be in effect immediately. I know that Dryden had a multiple months delay when they adopted, and there was a delay for actual implementation.
Well, that was
I don't-
because they made a mistake with the submitting it and they had to redo it.
Oh, actually, the supervisor told me they wanted to give a delay.
Oh, that's not what the other person told me. So I don't, maybe there's confusion.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I mean, we didn't go into an in-depth discussion on it. I would be concerned about going. I'm actually not opposed to the stretch code. I'm concerned about the implementation schedule.
But there's always going to be a project, so we'll never be able to do it.
No, that's
if you
not
say
true.
that.
No, you can say that you're gonna adopt it, but it doesn't go into effect until September 1st, or they're just January 1st.
So
That-
people have time to plan and
Yeah.
make sure they get a permit. I mean,
I mean, that's my thought. I would hate to see, it's not that that the construction ever stops, but putting on a schedule that people can adapt to in a reasonable fashion would be my concern. The other concern I have is a June 30th date would mean Mark would need to be fully up and running to be able to do it. That's going to be huge staff implications for the staff, implications for the clerk's office. And I hate to say it, but I found the presentation that questions were not well answered. And so I would hope that if we have another educational session, that the question, and I actually watched the village's presentation as well, and it was also, there was not all the questions were well answered.
So
So-
what are the questions that need to be answered? I'm happy to try to get the answers. No one told me any questions that they didn't think were answered, so.
Well,
It's very
Rich asked a
hard.
question at the meeting about the boiler system. And
Right, the heating systems have nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with the type of heating that you use. It's energy efficiency and electrical, that things that put in place the ability to go to electrification of your heating systems.
well, I had a question about windows and the cost of windows. I was interested in the question of what's going to cost in material changes, because we were told in the presentation, there will be no cost to change in material presentation. And a code officer told me that's not in fact the case, that the windows, for instance, windows required to meet the stretch code are somewhat significantly more expensive than the windows required under the current energy code. So I have a question about building materials that I think is necessary, specifically because of the serious situation. I think it'd be important in any situation, but we're under a serious situation where there's a shortage of supplies and inflationary costs are really high. And so I would like to know, I think the public needs to know, I would like to know that.
and what is Mark's opinion on this?
He will do whatever I mean, he serves, to serve the town. But he's expressed to me concerns that of wanting to be fully prepared and up to date. And he's currently very busy and trying to fit in ramping up to be up to date for June 30th. Might be challenging.
I have tried to communicate with him and he didn't answer me, so it's not like I didn't ask.
Well, feel free if you
We
have
don't
questions.
a very clear, I guess you have to go in a circle when you try to get information from other staff people in town.
I'm always happy to facilitate working with staff, but it's very difficult for staff to serve many different board members when when in that position, he reports to the supervisor. So if you're ever having issues, this is the first I'm hearing that you've had an issue. Feel free to
It's
talk
not
to
an
me.
issue. I have been trying to explore with him after we both were on the same.
I would
webinar.
like to hold, if there is going to be a further discussion of this nature, we go into executive session because it's not appropriate for a public
True.
discussion.
In any
It's
event,
just a discussion of how town board people can deal with, ask staff people questions.
No, you're referring to a specific board, a
No,
specific
I'm-
staff member.
Just because he's the code enforcement officer, but the question is just how can I communicate and ask him the question directly? It seems like not.
all right, so
That's my
this is a
question.
general question.
I'm not criticizing Mark. I'm asking
All
a
right,
general
that's it.
question.
What do you think the protocol should be for town board members to go interact with staff members?
I think our staff members across the board are happy to interact with board members. I think the line becomes crossed if it's gonna take a significant amount of time that's beyond a normal constituent request. If it's going to take up significant staff time, it needs to be run through me so I can help coordinate it. As I do help coordinate when we have issues, facilitating so that we have additional zoning help. So we have dealing with the clerk's office to making sure that questions are getting answered in a timely fashion. So a single question stopping by, our staff will always be happy to talk to somebody. People do it every single day. But if it's going to take significant time, there needs to be some communication on it.
Thank you. That's all.
Clear.
Fine, let's move on. We're not doing it. It's clear that the board is not interested.
It's not clear at all.
Yes, it is.
I actually expressed that I am supportive of
Yeah,
the
I
stretch
am
code.
too. We're just.
I'm
But we're
simply
not doing
concerned.
it on, trying to get it done on the time frame of the Clean Energy Communities Program.
Well, I don't think $5,000 for the town is worth the cost to its staff and the public to not have sufficient opportunities to participate and have questions answered. I'm concerned about the timeline, not concerned about the stretch code.
I wasn't concerned about the $5,000. I was trying to move the whole thing forward. We would get that. We would become eligible for another $10,000 grant. That will help, can help people.
All right,
That's
so
why
my
I thought it
question,
was
so Roxanne, I find you're assuming some things here. I asked a question about can we, if we go for the June 30, can we implement it later? I don't think we have the answer to that.
Yeah, I think probably the answer is it needs to be active as of that date, but I will find that out. I will find it out. And I will find out what happens on whatever time frame you put this in place, if there are applications in the works.
Right.
If they were started, I suspect that they will need to comply. So I think you're probably right. We have to many months in advance tell people that this is happening
I think you gotta give people
in
6
a long time.
months.
And so that's what we should do.
Well, if you'd like to,
On from this topic.
well, if you'd like to schedule another session, if you want to do it in conjunction with the village, we can do that. We can have another, education session. We can get that on the schedule.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll see what the village is doing and what speed that they're moving on with it. And I would like our planning board to look at it at some point. And I think it would be better if they didn't have a lot of other things on their plates. And the CSAC is already supportive of it, but I think they should look at it. I'd like to do some outreach to builders and designers that come into the town for permits and get input from them. There are some ideas, a list of local people, and find out from Mark, perhaps others, and then we can send out specific inquiries. I don't know how else to outreach it. I think we should put it on our website that we're looking at it. But we can do all that. I could write that up and we could put it out there, and there doesn't have to be a timeline, but we could start getting information.
I wonder how it would work with, like a designer is designing a home and, maybe it's a design build company and they quote, give a quote for the construction of this building. And then this code comes in
Yeah. That's
into
my-
play,
yeah.
that would affect what it would cost them. I mean, it may save the homeowner money in the future. So, they may not be so concerned about the cost, but I'm sure that the design build company would. Because, they want to make money on their work.
I also know that we're seeing some, and I don't know exactly how many, but I know that there have been some modular homes installed, so purchased, constructed out of state and delivered here as like units. And so I'm sure there's a long lag time. I'm not saying that we need to do, like, to Roxanne, your very fair point, they're always going to be building. So it's not like you can get a perfect timeline, but I would be interested to know, are buildings that are currently being constructed, would they meet the standards or not, based on, Mark's review. I'm not asking somebody else to do anything else. I do know, for instance, that the INHS property under proposal will actually meet the stretch energy code because they actually got funding, and that's in the village, but they got funding.
Novels?
No, the INHS Crescent Way over on South Street.
Oh, yeah.
So the proposed designs over there will meet stretch code because they actually got funding correlated to designing that. So that's not an issue on that property, but I don't know outside of, that, whether or not their proposed projects that may or may not. So,
I certainly wasn't satisfied with the guys, with the presenters when I don't think he knew or knows what the excess cost is gonna be. He said like 2 or 3%.
There, so NYSERDA has been putting together these presentations, and they have these estimates. And they say 1 to 3%. And then when I was speaking with, I'll just say this and then we can move on. When I was speaking with the task force coordinator for Dryden, she told me that that came up as an issue that some people, builders in their community brought up, that NYSERDA and the analysis that they were doing was for New York State, and it may not have been accurate for more locally than that. So they had a member on their planning board and their task force who was an expert in project management stuff, had done a whole bunch of different ones. I don't recall it all now, who did an analysis, a reanalysis of it for the local area. And this was a year ago, so
What did it
things
come
have
up
changed,
with?
but it came out at like 2.2%. And she sent me that, so I have that information too. So, and a reanalysis was done of it. So the estimate
Okay.
is 1 to 3, and I think that, and then somebody else did something less rigorous for Newfield and found the same thing also. So I think that's a pretty reasonable number.
On a $400,000 house, it's another 8,000.
And it goes into your mortgage or
Right,
whatever, and then
right,
you're
right.
gonna save $8,000 pretty quickly, potentially, but. And it may be worth $8,000 more when you sell it, but it's, yes, it might cost a bit more at the beginning, and that is an issue for me when I understand that, but. Part of
Yeah, I
the
got
argument
it,
is
yeah.
it's incorporated into the mortgage and the loan that you pay
Of
off much
course.
more slowly. And so that they're promoting this NYSERDA and the state as one way to try to get towards the meet the new energy
Yeah.
goals that they have. And so they're trying to help municipalities in any way that they can. So,
I mean, I'm all for it. I just don't want
So-
to penalize people who've already planned a project. And and they're not aware they're gonna get hit with this 2.2% up front.
I would love to see that analysis, and it would be interesting too. I don't know if it's all just new construction, because obviously the ability to be able to afford to build a brand new house is you're a fairly elite option. I'd be interested to see too. I don't know if, and maybe it covers it, but the cost to renovate
Retrofit.
or retrofit or build an addition on an existing home, which is I think an option a lot of people have greater access to than building from scratch.
Well, that's a good point. If you're adding an addition to an existing home, does that come under the new code?
if it's large enough, apparently it's a size thing.
And it's also if it's like a completely independent one. So I asked our code officer about that. And it's his understanding that like if you put a new wing, like an addition, that addition has to be energy
Right, but
compliant. It
not-
doesn't
you don't have
trigger
to
the rest of the
retrofit
house.
the
No,
whole
it's not
house.
the whole rest of the house.
No. So
It's a good thing for people.
I don't think anyone's against it, Roxanne.
It is,
I think we're just trying to make sure people don't get blindsided by it.
right, so we need to start putting it out there, so.
Michael, did you
I
want to
will
weigh
put
in
some
on this?
materials together and we can decide whether to put them out there and move at whatever speed everybody wants.
I think that's great. I think you got a lot of great ideas for public engagement. Michael, did you have any thoughts on this matter?
I'm all for the stretch code. There's nothing exotic about it. All it does is push up where we're gonna be in a couple of years, just accelerates the schedule to it. So it doesn't specify any exotic materials that aren't, other than COVID times, readily available. And so I think it's a good thing. I would rather see this, people build efficiently than try to start putting the heat pumps and things. You need to build efficiently before you put a heat pump in. So this is a demand side application. So to me, this seems pretty simple.
Thank you. So go from here, like you proposed, Roxanne. Does that make sense?
Well, I was proposing trying to
Well, you could take a vote, Michael's. I mean,
move on and get a planning board meeting on the schedule, get more input, and get questions and get them answered.
Well, I don't think there's any
So that's
problem with
what I
doing
was
any of
proposing.
those things. Those don't require resolutions. I mean, I think having more information, having the planning board weigh in, I think those are great things.
You could call for a vote.
So
in
I
terms
can
of-
contact,
He
The
doesn't need a
planning
vote to
board
do these
chair?
things.
No, but she wants to see if you want to implement by June 30th.
Well, we can't, we don't need to take a, like, in order to implement by June, you can,
yeah, I mean, in order to do that, we'd have to take up a local law.
right.
Right.
Probably at the next meeting and schedule a public hearing and get another input and have more public information, you know, it would take
Yeah,
that sort of stuff.
Could we even meet that schedule though, if we brought it up in the next?
We could, but you know, maybe there's not enough time to get public input. Enough public input, you know, that's the question. I mean, there's a lot of draft local laws out there. There's the ones Dryden used, there's the Ron Newcomb. You can make a template for local law. I could talk to the attorney about it. Can bring it up, you know, in April, you can have a public hearing in the beginning of May or something. You can have it would take a lot. It would be a tight schedule. You could discuss it at the May 10th meeting. And then, you know, if we wanted to change things or take more of the account in, you can have another public hearing on the 24th and vote, but you'd have to probably vote by the 24th of May, or the meeting in June would be the absolute last time. So you'd have to get a lot of other information in between. So it would take concerted work. And so I'm willing to put the time into pulling some of the things together, but it still would take concerted work, and people might not feel comfortable enough that people would know about it for long enough. And I don't know the answer to the question about it being grandfathered in and people are planning projects and Mark might not have time to feel comfortable about the planning. So,
well, I think those are questions we need to answer. I'd like to get that. You're going to find out the answer to that question that I raised.
yeah, I will try.
And I think Mark has to be comfortable with the timeline. If he's not, then I don't, he's already got more on his plate.
Yeah.
Since we don't have a planner.
So I want to make sure that we can hit the ground successfully and not hit the ground and smack into a wall.
Right.
Right.
So from a management standpoint,
Yeah, can I make a comment?
Right.
Also?
of course.
I just feel like it's important to look at it in the scope of all the other things that are board priorities to the town board right now, because there's a lot on the plate. And all those things have kind of staff implications, and we are short-staffed. So I just think it's important to focus on which things of the many things that we're doing are priorities for the next 3 months or whatever.
Thank you.
I agree with that. Okay, well, I'll pull together some information and then we can go from there.
We'll put it on the agenda.
If you
for
have
next
other
meeting.
particular questions, send them to me and I will try to get them answered. Well, I'll get them answered. Okay.
I think it'd be really helpful if there's a public friendly presentations that we could watch or have access to. I think there's a lot of information out there. Discerning which is a good one to watch, I think would be helpful.
Well, I mean, all the presentations I've gone to, which is about 3, I've sent you links, that's what they have. They have these webinars that are for the public. They're like 2 hours long
Right.
mostly. There's like 10 slide fact sheets that are condensed. There's 2 of those, I sent those. There's a description of it and how you implement it. That's a document that I don't know. if
Part
I
of
sent.
that
Right.
webinar, 2-hour webinar we watched at the presentation.
Right,
Right.
there's
For the
clips
village.
of it,
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, was it?
It was the
Was it
village
village?
presentation. It wasn't
Right, they
here.
were gonna
Oh,
do that
okay.
one here, but we had a lot of questions already, so I wanted to use
Oh,
the
okay.
limited time for them to answer the questions, and I figured the webinar could be watched whenever the clip of it. She said the clip of what she was gonna show. I haven't seen a webinar shorter than an hour on it, but that's what's out there. I mean, they're making, NYSERDA is making these things, but nobody's made, one that's 10 minutes
Right.
long. They've made 10 slide
Yeah.
things
yeah.
that are static, but that's it. So, I asked both Dryden and Newfield folks who were the ones who pulled the information together for the board and all, and they didn't have anything else besides the stuff that's out there already. That I asked them about that. So like, what kind of materials did you use for your public outreach? So, I mean, I could look at everything that's there. I was gonna do that. I will do that because I'm interested in seeing us move this forward at some point anyway. And that can do the best that we can to
Well, we're gonna
educate the
move- I mean, I
public. And
think
I will
this
keep
enters-
asking the nice sort of people, maybe there's something else, but I asked Gina Cassidy, and I haven't gotten anything else from her other
Right.
than those things, so. I don't know, maybe NYSERDA will keep coming out with things. I don't know. I will keep an eye on it and see what I can get to
Yeah.
put together that might work.
It'd just be nice, it's for the public, asking the public to watch a 2-hour presentation is pretty tough.
Right.
I mean,
No, I
so,
agree.
yeah.
But what, you can pull pieces of it out, which is what those 2 10-slide things were.
Right.
Maybe they're not adequate. We could look at them and see what else we want to add in. I'll work on it. I was
Right.
planning to work on it anyway, so I'll work on it.
Thanks.
Excellent. So moving on to the rec partnership, I did, as I think I mentioned, for those here, sorry, Michael, I can't share with you a hard copy, but there are electronic copies. The reintroduction of the intermunicipal partnership agreement, Mary. I thought that we were just getting comments. They needed us to approve it.
Well, if we want to make any changes, they want to have those at the next rec partnership meeting.
Okay,
So that they can, any changes that are made in the agreement need to be sent out to all of the municipalities and incorporated in so that everybody's council can review the contract. And that may take some time.
okay. So what do we need to do tonight, I guess? So-
Well, I guess if people have changes that they want to suggest on the contract,
Okay,
then they should bring them up, I suppose. If there are no changes, I would suggest that we just approve it and, just bring it back to the rec partnership and say, we're good with this partnership agreement. So,
Okay.
I
So-
mean, it's hasn't really changed over 22 years since, it was first started. There's been a couple of little tweaks. I don't know exactly what they are, but this is what Liz, I forget her name or something.
Coleman,
Yeah, what's the rest of it?
Cole,
Coleman.
Cloman, yeah.
I would make a motion to approve it.
Second.
any further discussion?
I read it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Care of that.
It's moving right
so
along.
this is what happens. We get very efficient at 9:35. I broke my record of
You did,
9:12.
Caitlin.
Dang it. Okay, so we're gonna have to start public hearings at 5 PM.
Well, yeah, if you have a public hearing on a controversial
that,
thing that
yeah.
starts at 7, it's gonna be a longer
Yeah.
meeting.
Well, I was just joking.
No, no, I mean,
Yeah.
can't avoid it.
No. And I don't want to do them at 5 PM because I want the public to actually participate. So moving on, exotic animal ordinance. I included potentially scheduling a public hearing, not saying that it was not my suggestion the board has to do it. I was just having language ready if the board wanted to. So I think based on our timeline tonight, I'm happy to get feedback now with the idea that we can reintroduce this at another meeting. I do want to be mindful that this project has been in the works
Yeah.
for, 10 months. But I wondered if the board had any initial comments or feedback.
Well, again, we're looking at something that sounds like it's not really going to be an issue this year because didn't the fair guy say that they have a high wire act or something and they're not going to have?
Well, he says it's winding down. He didn't say they're not gonna have any.
I thought he said that they weren't going to have an animal act this year.
I did
I don't know.
not get that, but
I didn't get. that
my ears might have been clogged, but I'm sorry, I did not catch that part of it.
Yeah, it wasn't clear. He said it was winding down.
Yeah.
He said there wasn't
either. I think he said in a couple of years there wouldn't be any more.
Yeah,
Mm.
I think, I guess, based on tonight's public here comments, that maybe it makes sense to have on the website where we have current events or current issues, that we put this as a, a proposed resolution that's being considered and just have it up there so people could read it for a while and give input if they want to.
So we don't have to have a public hearing?
No, we do have that.
Do.
So this is just a discussion tonight, and we could choose to schedule a public hearing. We're just having a discussion.
So I guess I'm suggesting that perhaps we put it out there for a little while, get some input. Look at the law, make sure that's how we want it to be based on the input that we're gonna hear, taking it or not, as makes sense.
Well, let's do
And
that.
then have, if this is the way we decide we want the law, then go for it from there and make a public hearing and work on it. I'm just suggesting putting it out there sooner than it seems
I
like
understand.
it's a pending law that's gonna happen.
Well, that's
Right,
fine.
well, you have to decide on a final draft.
To have a public hearing, but not to just put it on the website
Right.
and say it's a current, it's an issue the board's working.
Right, I did put it out in the newsletter, and it is, the draft was posted on the meeting materials, so it wasn't.
But maybe if we move it over to.
Put it on the
go to read-
website and we'll talk about it in 2 weeks.
Sounds great.
Or.
There wasn't any response to the newsletter, I take it.
On this item, no. And I made sure that we have a fair liaison, and I made sure that the fair liaison contacted the fair so that it was not a surprise to them. The way the law was drafted was to exclude, like, the Cuba Nature Center, exclude educational shows that come through, like Dan the Snake Man's been one example. So that was handled during the process based on feedback from board members back then. So the fair was appeared to me to be the only entity who was doing these kinds of activities, who might be impacted by a change. So we made sure that they were directly contacted. Okay, appointments to alternate positions on the planning board and to conservation and sustainability advisory committee. These are in the resolution packets. My resolution packet is right here. This is what the resolution packet looks like. I know you have lots of paper. There's actually 2 sets of resolutions, but this is the one we're starting with. It's on the back on page 2. Rich, you can have my copy. It's the town board members were provided with the applicant materials. This is, I'll give you, oh, there you go, other side. This is a resolution to appoint Elizabeth Gardner, who's a professional planner, to serve as first alternate to the planning board for a term expiring December 31st, 2022. She would serve as first alternate, and it also appoints Elizabeth Thomas, former town supervisor, to serve as the second alternate to the planning board for a term also expiring December 31st, 2022. And then it would further resolve to appoint Kate Darfler to serve as a member of the Conservation Sustainability Committee for a term expiring December 21st, 2022. 31st, sorry, not 21st.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Or any further discussion?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
How did we come up with Garner as the first choice?
Well, we interviewed both applicants, and Liz is Elizabeth Gardner is a professional planner with a bachelor's degree or a master's degree in planning. Elizabeth Thomas suggested that she might be doing some traveling, and so she was very happy to be in the alternate role. So
So
that's how we did it.
are all these to fill the alternate role? There's no vacancies?
These are just
Two alternates.
two alternate
right now.
positions.
So we don't have any alternates right now.
Okay, because with the current state of the planning board, I'm like really, really nervous. And I would think that since they're all Elizabeths, I'll call them by their last name, that I would think Thomas would be, in my opinion, the better first choice. Because I'm again really nervous about our chair, who has served in no leadership role, and my guess is has zero training for planning board work and is.
Okay, Michael, I'm just going to interrupt you about talking about a specific person
I'm not
in public
naming names.
session. right, but
but
it's
this is
very
serious
clear.
enough. Okay,
So,
okay,
so
let me
Bobo-
leave it generic. Wait a minute, stop cutting me off. The training on the planning board, I've asked for a training matrix to see who has had training. We're a fourth of the way into our year. I don't believe, other than Mr. Van Way attending the meeting, any of these people have had any training. And thank God that we have people on that board that have some years of experience that are carrying us through. This is not a good show for us. So back to what we're voting on, you can call the vote, that's fine. I would vote for Elizabeth Thomas as our first alternate and Ms. Garner as the second. So I'll leave it at that because it's late and you've already broken your record of 9:12, so I'll shut up now.
I would only say further in comments that both alternates have full capacity to participate fully in the meeting. It only comes down to if there's an absence, somebody else getting to vote. So,
Oh, and one other thing I'd like to add, all their pedigrees look very, very good. So as we start to get into comprehensive planning, I would like to, I'll give you a shepherd's crook that you can like pull them in for some comprehensive planning because they all look very, very good for that.
Who?
All the people that were, was there 3 people or 2 for the planning board alternates?
Two.
2, okay, 2. I've got, I wrote my notes here, but I was writing them pretty fast. So whether you use Thomas or Garner, I think they would be good for comprehensive planning team members. That's all. Thank you.
Actually, as part of what Michael is saying, I guess I'd like to suggest that perhaps we appoint people contingent on them doing the 1.5 hour Department of State training that's introduction to being on a planning board, and you get a little certificate, like there's a certificate that means that you did it. And so if people really want to be on the planning board, I think they should know something about what they're getting into.
so we would need to go change what the requirements are for serving on the planning board. And there actually are specified.
But it says
There's 4 hours of training that are required.
Right.
So this would be 1.5 hours they'd have as they went on. They'd only need 2.5 more.
Yeah,
And
so
the
they're
rest of the
trained
people
before.
Should get trained too, I think.
Well, actually, no, I'm
Based on
saying,
Michael's reports, but
no, that we actually have written rules about in terms of how many meetings you have to attend in order to continue to serve on the planning board. And so what's being proposed is that if you don't do these trainings, you can't serve on the planning board. And so that would be modifying rules beyond what an appointment is. Does that make sense? So we actually have rules that if you miss a certain number of meetings, you can be
Yeah.
removed from the meeting, removed from the
But we have
board.
a training requirement.
Well,
Right.
New York State has a training requirement, but it doesn't specify what the training is required. So, you know, I served on the planning board and I took different training than other people took because
So-
of my own interests.
I guess I'm just suggesting that as we put new people on and we put these 2 new people on, that one of the
Yeah.
trainings that they do is the overview of the, it's a web thing, you can do it
That's
whenever
fine.
you
I think we
want,
should do it.
that the state gives on how planning boards work, so that you know that they're at least walking in
But I
with
think
some
everybody,
idea.
and I think everybody on the planning
I
board
do
should do
too.
that as well.
I do too.
I have no problem with doing that. We can't do that in this amendment
Right,
or in this
okay.
resolution.
Should- Right.
Why?
Because it changes the rules for everybody unless that changes rules that we're not actually looking at because there are actually rules that say about what someone has to do to serve on the planning board. And I would like us to have those in front of us. We can table this and we can not appoint
We
them.
No, I
can't
think we
table it.
should
We have
appoint them,
to-
but then I'd like to see us take that up pretty soon,
Right.
because it sounds like we
We
really
need
would
it.
do well to have people on our planning board have some idea of how it works. And if we're putting more people on, I think they should have an idea how it works.
Well, I would imagine that a professional planner who has a professional degree in planning is very capable of doing that. I would have no concerns about that, nor do I have any concerns about former Supervisor Thomas and her ability to do it. But if you want to adjust the rules for the entire planning board, we can absolutely look at that.
I would like to.
I think it's a great idea to see the certificates.
It's like a general training, and then they
Yeah.
can do other hours of other
Yeah.
things. But at least you know that everybody knows the scope of the planning board, how it fits with what the BZA does, what they can and can't do, what
Yeah, yeah,
the
of course.
basic rules and structure of being on a planning board in New York State entail.
Carissa, who tracks this?
I do.
So are people up to date on their training?
No, beginning of the year.
Right, but they did it last year?
Hmm,
Not really.
I don't know.
All right, so we
Some
need,
people did,
we
for
need
sure.
to monitor that.
So
somehow.
I would love a volunteer from the
Yeah.
town board who wants, Michael has his hand raised, just a sec, Michael. I'd like a volunteer from the town board who would like to look at the current regulations and make any recommendations for consideration at a future town board meeting. I personally cannot add this to my plate right
Right,
now.
right,
With the Camp Barton is taking up an awful lot of time, not to mention the other things that have now landed on my plate. So who wants to do that? Michael?
I can do it.
Great. Let me know when you're ready for it to review at a town board meeting.
Okay, well, I'd send it to you guys ahead of time. I'll look into it and send it out to you guys, and then you guys can give me feedback on what other homework I would need to do.
Sounds great.
Sure,
Okay.
I'm happy to help.
All right,
you
so
if
let's
you want
move,
to.
let's vote.
Okay, so for appointing him.
So you moved, Mary seconded. Is there any further comment? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No opposed. Thank you very much. And for the public record, thank you to each of these individuals for being willing to serve as a volunteer on our boards.
Caitlin, one quick question.
Yes, sir.
Linda had her hand up for the discussion during that, so since she was the past chair, if we could recognize her for whatever input she needed to give us.
Sure, Linda, go ahead.
Oh, sure. I was just going to say, and I was just typing it in to send it to Michael, but during the whole COVID thing, most of the training that was available online. And a lot of times they weren't very good about getting certificates or things like that back to people, or I had trouble getting some certificates. And I took more than 4 hours, but so just a heads up. So it may not look like people had training, but I do know several folks who did have training. And we also had a session with John Zepko when he was still around. He trained us for about an hour or something as well. So.
And the planning board and the BZA and those are the two that are coming tonight. I don't know if we're inviting everybody else. There's going to be training on March 12th as well.
Right, good.
But that does meet also.
Not March.
I'm sorry, May 12th.
But I do agree with getting some kind of the New York State course, and I'm not sure that a lot of folks have had that because I took something up at Cortland Community College, or TC3, when I started, and that was really good, and it really emphasized the legal, a lot of the legal ramifications and things like that in trouble you can get into, which would be probably great for Pete to take, something like that. And if the New York state that Roxanne referred to does that, that would be a good thing.
Thank you very much, Linda.
If you could give Michael that information on that one that you were talking about that you put out, he can put it into his compilation.
Yeah, if I can remember, I'll have to go back and see what I have on it.
Thank you.
And does Tompkins County TC3 still do that too? That's the other thing.
Okay, we're moving on to committee and liaison assignment overviews. I'm sorry, maybe I was supposed to move this to B, and I apologize if I was supposed to move that to B. No, I didn't. No, we didn't move this one. I was looking at a B in the wrong place.
No, it was just moving up the stretch. code.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Right, and so I requested this just because you made it when there were only 4 people on the board, and so I thought that it would just be good to look at and see if everybody's still good with all of it now that you have another person.
Oh, yeah.
I can take on
Yeah.
some of the things,
So we have,
and I can tell you what I want to take on if you want.
Is there an extra copy of this floating around down there?
yes,
Probably there.
Michael's spot.
Let's see.
Chris, it's
Here
what
it
you
is.
sent me, but I think I added Roxanne where she belonged on
You
to
know
what
I
she'd
have
already
to
been
tell
appointed
you?
to.
When you go click on who the supervisor, when I go to send something to the supervisor in Ulysses, Liz's still face comes
That's
up or
in
something.
your email, not in mine.
Yeah.
That's in your email.
Why
You have
is
to go into
that?
your contacts and
Yeah.
update the name.
Change the name.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
sorry, I can't do anything about that.
That's okay. What do you want to do?
Well, I'm on the IT committee and I'm fine with that, but if Mary had brought up at the last meeting that she had some background training in that, and so
Yeah.
if she wanted to do that, I mean,
I
I
would
think,
love to do that.
I think we
mean,
can't really have 3 people on as, committee members or liaisons, because then if we
It's a
all show
public
up
meeting.
there, it's a public meeting. So
Yeah.
I'm saying I'm happy to work on that and help, but I'm also happy if there's somebody else who has a stronger interest and to do it. So I'm okay with letting go of that one and having Mary do it. I would very much like to be on the comprehensive plan committee, one of the 2 people. And if there's something else somebody really doesn't want to do, let me know. And the other thing that I'd be glad to do, and I'm probably going to start attending the meetings anyway, because I think they're really useful, is the Council of Governments. So I know that you have a lot on your plate already, and their meetings that start at 3 o'clock, and once they go in person, it might be hard to get to them on Thursdays.
No,
but-
I definitely want to be at the Council of Government. You're so welcome to be the alternate. But I
Well,
plan
Rich
to
is,
go.
so he would have to
No,
not
no,
want to
you,
be,
you
but
can be the alternate.
I'm happy to go.
Go
because
ahead.
was
I
gonna
find
go
them
there.
very, I
Yeah,
find them
they're
very useful.
super useful. I went to them
At
all
3
the time.
o'clock, it's really hard. for
It's
me to
really
get
hard,
there.
yeah. And I'm usually at work, so I can go there. Okay, that's great. I will be the alternate for that. And anything else that anybody wants, but the comp plan one I would like to discuss, because I wasn't on the board. And I, obviously, in my interview, in my application materials and everything that I wrote, expressed that that was a strong reason that I wanted to join the board at this time. And I also think that all the other things I'm working on, the CSAC, the watershed protection stuff with Clio, the clean energy communities and the climate smart programs, those all dovetail into looking at sustainability aspects and other aspects of climate resiliency aspects of a comprehensive plan. So
And
that-
actually, this was brought up today at this hearing.
Right.
That the importance of having an updated comprehensive plan,
Right.
because, we're gonna hear 2009, is not 2021.
So anyway.
22, right? Whoa.
It'll be 2023 by the end of this meeting.
Well, it'll be 2023 by the time we have a draft of the comprehensive plan. If we, I think that it would be good to just get it going,
We need a staff.
find some people.
Well, I'm
No.
happy to help start working on it.
Well, we need a staff, we need a planner, because the
Well,
planner is going to be the chief person who is going to facilitate it from a staff standpoint, because this is not something that just happens. And we need a planner in place.
I'll just say that we did the other comprehensive plan without a planner, because we didn't even have a planner then. So we did both of the comprehensive plans that this town has had without a planner. So it's not that it.
So did
cannot
the
be done.
village, I mean,
Right. It can be.
They just
it
did
can
a
be
comprehensive
started,
plan.
Right, it could be started. We can talk through how we want to do it. We can start thinking about it before we have a planner, I would suggest, because it has definitely been done.
the
before.
village hired a consultant to help
Right,
them with
that's what we
theirs.
did.
I
last-
mean,
Last time we had
we
a
could-
steering committee and we did some surveys, we hired, there's a lot of things that could be discussed without a planner leading it. Once we get a planner, they're gonna be pretty overloaded. And so if we wait till we get a planner who's on board and jump started, we're gonna be waiting a year. At any rate, we can have a further discussion on that because it's late but I would like to be one of the 2 people who are on the comprehensive plan committee.
Well, seeing as how I'm a professional planner, I'm not bowing out of my role, so.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Where was the,
I can bow out of my role if you need to.
It's number Q on the second.
you-
down at the
The
bottom,
first Q, the first.
there's a couple of
bottom of the
things.
second page,
Yeah.
or the first
Oh, I
page.
see,
sorry.
okay.
Third page.
All right,
What about cyber and IT with the decision? Or
Mary is going to move on to cyber and IT. And Roxanne's going to become the alternate on TCOG.
I thought Linda Little was on the cyber and IT.
She is, but she's not.
We're just talking about the
This is
board.
just board
On the
members.
board member.
Yeah, these are just board positions that we're considering.
And I'm gonna be Michael's place. He just offered on the
Right.
comprehensive plan.
That's what he said.
Thank you, Michael.
Oh, but you're, Rich, you're the alternate
On which?
on the comprehensive
No,
plan?
not anymore.
Well,
No.
Michael can. be the
Michael could be
alternate.
there. Could fill in
Michael
that.
could be the alternate.
Yeah. Is that okay, Michael?
Can you hear
Yes.
us?
Yes, that's
Okay.
great. Thank you.
And if there's anything else, anybody feels like they need me to do. So Mary, you're gonna do that too?
Yeah.
And I'll stay the alternate on the IO watershed. And Mary and I will stay
Oh, and
the-
you will be on the voucher review for the second half of the
Right,
year.
and the sustainability committee that's already added on here.
Yep.
So the voucher review is the second half of the year.
Right.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
So you need a motion to make these changes to appointments.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Right.
Yeah.
Aye.
Okay, so, comptroller report, became public on, April 1st. We were required to have submitted a letter, which we did, and it was, we opted to also include our follow-up next steps on that, in terms of a corrective action plan. So I just wanted to let you know that that report is public. We have shared it, with the people through the newsletter. I sent out a press release to local news agencies. Apparently, we're not that exciting, so it has not broken in the local news. It might, well, in the future, sometimes I see things many, many weeks out after, so you never know, it might. But when we applied for the congressional allocation, there was, and I will get you the full version of that went out. But we did apply to help remedy some of the issues identified in the comptroller's report as part of that funding package. So that's what I have from there. Any questions? Okay. There were written reports provided by all of these positions, except town board members. Were there any other announcements anybody wanted to make?
I just have one question, which is that it doesn't look like I mean, I can write the rest of the things I was gonna say, but it doesn't look like we're advertising for a zoning officer. Although 2 meetings ago, we decided to do it, and then we even asked about it at the last meeting to correct the minutes and said, yes, indeed, that's what we said. So
We have not yet advertised
Are
for
we
a
gonna
zoning
do that?
officer. We were waiting to see, to be honest, we have I can send it to you. Chris has seen it. I have a whole package to try and do a recruitment and also the budget implications for having another one. Unfortunately, the budget implications and that request coincided with somebody being out for a couple of weeks. So because of health reasons. And so we have not advertised for a zoning officer. We are advertising actively for a planner. And we haven't posted, it goes out this week in addition to where we've normally posted to the other positions, like Indeed and things like that, to try and get to robust.
Wait a minute, refresh my memory. We were gonna put out a request for both a zoning officer and a planner
And a
and see what we
part-time.
got.
zoning officer, yeah,
Because if you get a zoning officer, you can't have a full-time planner.
yes, you can.
We don't have it
We
budgeted
don't
to
have
do
the
that.
budget for
But
it.
we haven't spent any of the planner money that we've had budgeted so far.
But it persists not just in this year, it will
Right,
have
yeah,
serious
it
budget
does.
implications for next year. It's not a one-time.
But maybe we need it. And maybe we get it going. I mean, it seems like we have a real crisis
In what?
in zoning enforcement and
I
planning.
agree, we do, we all agree.
Right, That's
That's
what
why
we
we
talked
did
about
it,
at the
right.
last meeting,
Right.
and why we said maybe we should look at that.
And I have no problem, and I think that that deserves follow-up conversation. I think it was a very off the cuff in the meeting without looking at any budget implications, without thinking about the impact to the budget for 2023. And on the assumption that people don't want to be zoning officers, even though I said both the people we have previously interviewed and our previous zoning officer didn't have a problem being the zoning officer. So I think it was predicated, I think that it came out of nowhere, and that we needed, our HR representative recommended we take a pause and think about whether or not we focus on the position that we actually really need, because there are other ways to deal with zoning that are not appropriate for a public session because it pertains to particular properties that repeatedly come up as issues. Does that make
Who's our
sense?
HR representative.
Lexi.
Well, if the board discussed something, then the board should be discussing it further.
Then we need to discuss it further.
Right.
All right, well, let's discuss it further.
Sounds great.
All right, next meeting.
Was there anything, were there any town board member announcements other than that? Or that was a question? Okay,
That was a question.
so April 26th and May 10th,
I
moving
may
on to
not be
approval of
here.
the
I may
minutes.
not be here on May 10th.
May 10th, you might not be, okay. Okay. I will just let you know that it is anyone's guess how long the emergency will last, allowing us to continue for board members to participate remotely without notification of their location. And we are traditionally not finding out until the next day after it's previously expired, and it's on a 30-day.
There was a
cycle.
update on that. I don't fully understand the language. Maybe Nate does.
He has not sent me anything. Was it today?
Just in the last couple of days, I think, that it says, I think it can go through June.
Okay, I'll check with Nate. Okay, approval of minutes. We have one set of minutes that were provided for the meeting. They were for March 22nd. Did anyone have any alterations?
No.
I just had one thing which was on the stretch code. It didn't quite read what it is, and maybe that's what they said, and that's fine, but I didn't know if you want to correct it to be what is correct or what they said. So I can send this to you, but I was proposing having it read, Mr. Vogel and Ms. Cassidy shared a presentation on New York stretch code, which makes some changes to the New York State Energy Code to increase energy efficiency in commercial and residential building. It is not mandatory for municipalities to adopt a local energy code that will be the state energy code as modified by stretch. But NYSERDA and New York State are working on changes to the state code in alignment with New York State energy and greenhouse gas reduction goals, because I don't know about that 2025 thing. They keep changing that. So I thought if we just had it be more general, then people would, if they read these minutes, would know what it is. I can just send you that if you want, Carissa.
Were there any other alterations? Then I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Okay, budget modifications. Michelle said we can do this at our next meeting if you would prefer. It's 2 pages front and back. She provided an explanation of moving money around, particularly for capital funds. So we'll remember, because we fairly tightly budgeted everything, that we'll see more budget modifications this year than in previous years.
So is
We
that a
had
move
to-
to table?
I'm sorry, Michael, go ahead.
Is that a move to table till next meeting?
No, I'm saying we can, or if people feel comfortable moving ahead, I would suggest getting it done, but if
Okay,
people have
that's fine.
questions, and then I'm happy to. Michael, I'm sorry, I forgot that you were gonna be out of town, so we have a
Yeah.
resolution.
That's
for
not a
payment of-
problem. That's why there's 5 of us.
She sent it out over email, I
Oh,
believe.
you
Did
did?
she? Actually, I can't verify
I
that.
don't. remember
Oh,
She
that.
provided to me, and I
The
apologize.
budget mods?
Yeah.
I got it too.
Okay, maybe I.
I think it's just
Yeah.
Oh, I did say I would provide them at the meeting in the
Right,
resolution.
yeah, I didn't get it. in by email.
So do the board members here?
So
and-
maybe since Michael didn't get to read it.
I'm good. You know, if you guys think it's good, then I'll vote with you. That's fine.
So the modifications are on the one page and then just showing you the budget lines where things are going. So
Caitlin,
we're closing out. Yes.
are these like really small?
No,
No, I mean, we have to do liability insurance for the excavator. So we had to pull that from contingency. That's one item. The new excavator, because we didn't have insurance for it, because we didn't have it. And then the other two are related to closing out capital project expenses related to the grant projects.
Oh, the bridge and the water.
Yeah,
but these are all in the budget, right?
these are all in the budget. Yeah, we're not breaking our budget in any way. We're just moving money around from line items to offset. And we're actually way under budget. We came way under budget for the bridge project.
All right, well, I move we adopt these.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then payment of claims. So the payment of,
So I made a change when I was reviewing the claims.
okay,
There was a claim in there to pay Mark Washburn for meals at this conference. And he happened to be in the office. Anyway, so I approved it and I'm flipping through the claims and then the claim for the credit card came up. And those meals were actually on the credit card. So I asked Mark, did you submit these things? He said, well, I gave them to Caitlin as backup for the, but he used the credit card basically to buy these meals.
Okay.
And the only reason I noticed it is because the place he went was called Smoking Lips Barbecue. Sticky Lips, yeah. So it was like vivid in my mind.
Okay, good catch. All right, so.
So,
He
yes,
doesn't get reimbursed.
right. I mean, he did pay for the hotel room. And that was another claim, but, yeah. So
So
it
do we
was
know
like
that-
$41.
do we know that? Because we really do need to pay our bills. Can we pull that? Do we know which voucher that is? And we can exclude it?
149, I think.
Can we exclude it from the?
Mhm.
Okay. So I would make a motion to approve since the town board has reviewed and approves payment of claims with excluding the voucher that pertains to
Meal reimbursement.
meal reimbursement receipts, because that's
Yeah.
the actual receipts.
Yep.
Okay. And all of their bills are approved.
All right, second.
All those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And okay, we're at our second to last item, privilege of the floor. Is there any member of the public who would wish to address us on any topic? Please raise your hand or otherwise wave at us. I don't see anybody. Okay, I am not seeing anybody indicate that they're interested in talking, so
Move to adjourn.
Second.
thank you very much.
Oh, it's after 10 o'clock.